All right, y'all, what's up? This is Dart Throws and Cash, and we are gonna go over what happened this weekend, and then we are gonna put in a cash lineup and a GPP play for the Monday night showdown tonight. So this weekend was a little weird. There were a lot of injuries. A lot of big names did not score many fantasy points. Um, we had David Montgomery get injured. We had Amon-Ra St. Brown get injured. T. Higgins was taken out with a concussion. Garrett Wilson got a little bit injured, and there were some other notable injuries as well. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but yeah, it was pretty odd. I mean, the Dolphins beat the Bills. There were a lot of upsets. There were a lot of weird things going on. Most fantasy lineups were not successful. I was looking at the Millie Maker, and the person who scored first had 210 fantasy points, and four of his players underperformed where they were projected. So yeah, it was low scoring across the board all week. Unfortunately, our cash lineup did have David Montgomery in it, which kind of messed us up. He was high owned in the cash lineup, but it still hurt us to the point where that 23% that did not own him got ahead. So let's take a look real quick at that lineup. I've got it pulled up here. Jalen Hurts was a good pick overall. He had a great game, 3 passing touchdowns, 340 passing yards, 20 rush yards. That was pretty awesome. Joe Mixon, another dud. I don't know what to do with him at this point. It's pretty sad. He had a couple goal line carries and just could not get in the end zone. He's not getting as many receptions as I thought he would be. So he is kind of panic alert right now. I have him on one of my fantasy teams, and it's just not paying out. I could have started Damian Harris over him and gotten more fantasy points, but we'll see how it turns up. I probably will stay off Mixon until he has a big game, until I see something impressive from him. Like I said, David Montgomery injured in the first quarter. He had 11 rushing yards, and I think the worst part about it was that Khalil Herbert, his backup, came in, scored 2 touchdowns, had 150 rushing yards, and that really should have been David Montgomery. And if that would have happened for us, then we would have been a lot better off this week. It's highly unfortunate, but it is what it is. That's how fantasy is sometimes. Sometimes there's just things that are out of your control, and I made a good lineup at the end of the day. Like, I made a pretty good lineup, and I was confident in what I had done, and it just didn't work out exactly how it should have. So, yeah, I mean, let's look at the rest of the lineup real quick. We got Dortch. He did pretty well. He got our value back. He was 4,300 and scored 17 fantasy points. Amon-Ra St. Brown had some issues. He kind of limped off the field. I think it was in the first half, towards the end of the first half or the start of the second half, and he was taken out of the game for a little bit. He had a really great breakout play. I was pretty hyped about it. Then he got tackled like within the 5 yard line, so that was kind of upsetting. I was hoping he would score there. That would have been a difference maker for us. Okay, Nelson Aguilar, he only had 5.1 fantasy points. It was hard to pin down who the Patriots wide receiver was that they were going to go to this week, and it turned out to be Devontae Parker. He killed it. Devontae Parker had an amazing game. Kendrick Bourne had an okay game, but yeah, Devontae Parker was the main guy. If we would have picked Devontae Parker instead of Aguilar, then we would have been well off too. But I don't think anybody really saw Devontae Parker having a breakout game. His first two games were kind of meh. So I think that it was a good idea. We just didn't pick the exact right player. So I mean, I'm proud of myself there. Mac Jones had a great game. I think he's hurt now though. But that Ravens secondary, we are going to target again. Trust me, we will. Irv Smith Jr. He was pretty cheap, so 3,100. So he didn't absolutely kill us. He was pretty high owned. I guess a lot of people were on that same Irv Smith train where they saw the value where he could potentially have a great game. And 5.2 fantasy points didn't absolutely kill us. He didn't get a big old snowflake like the rest of our lineup. But I mean, he could have done better. He had a few drops. Kirk Cousins wasn't really on his A game. He had a better game this week, but it wasn't as good. Dalvin Cook ran a couple touchdowns and kind of siphoned off the passing touchdowns for Kirk Cousins there. Moving on to Tyreek Hill. I mean, He was a good pick overall. I think we had the right idea again, but the wrong player. So Waddle was the guy. I even said in that last video that Waddle could be the guy. He's the red zone guy, and I think the Bills just really locked down Tyreek Hill pretty well, and that left Waddle open. They probably had their best safety cornerbacks on Hill, it's probably double teaming him. So yeah, another good idea. But Waddle was the one to pick. So moving on, Texans D did pretty good, man. 5 sacks, 2 interceptions. They did allow a lot of points, but they returned value there. I mean, it's 2,600 and they scored 9 points, so that's 3 times value. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it didn't work out exactly how we wanted. I'll go through the rest of the lineups, the guys that I said were viable options. So yeah, starting off with Allen, he did great. I mean, he's gonna do great for the rest of the year. He had 400 passing yards. He just couldn't get in the end zone. They had, yeah, they always go for it on fourth down, and if they kick field goals, I think they would actually probably win more. But I think they're a much better team than the Dolphins. Diggs didn't have an absolutely terrible game. He got 14.4 fantasy points, so it wasn't a complete goose, but not the output we were expecting. I don't have the exact stats off the top of my head for these. I kind of rushed through to make this video. So, but Tua had a great game for the most part. He got around 20 fantasy points. Waddle had an amazing game, like I just said. I think he scored around 25 fantasy points. Gesicki, he did all right. I mean, he could have done better as well. And then Hill, yeah, kind of that dud, um, that snowflake next to his name, but it's okay. I mean, a lot of the lineups weren't good this week, so we are not the only ones. Jared Goff, 5,800. He did pretty well, return value there. DeAndre Swift, kind of another slow game. Jamal Williams got the touchdowns. It was kind of a second string type week. I mean, Jamal Williams had the most points, and then Khalil Herbert had a lot of points. I mean, it was kind of like second string guys were like the go to this week. So a lot of people were not on those guys. Uh, Justifiably. Nobody goes in expecting injuries, really. Nobody's going to plug somebody in their lineup because they're like, oh, I know somebody's going to get injured. That's impossible to predict. So St. Brown did all right. 13.3 fantasy points. Sorry, my dog is kind of playing around in the background, if you can hear him. But yeah, he didn't have a complete goose egg, but he could have done a little bit better. And the good thing about daily fantasy sports is if he is a little bit injured, then we don't have to pick him next week. But yeah, it was kind of a letdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, my favorite player right now, so hopefully he gets back in it and he does pretty well. So yeah, we got Cousins, 6,700. He returned value, had a pretty decent game, had 2 passing touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, yeah, we thought he was going to have a big game. He had bounce back potential, and it was another pretty trash game. I mean, I think he ended up with like 4 fantasy points, something like that. Dalvin Cook had 14.6. All of his points were pretty much from touchdowns. Irv Smith, another one, low scoring. I'm just going to briefly go over the rest. So Mahomes, 7,900. He was around 15 fantasy points. Not as good as I expected. I thought the Chiefs were going to win. So did Vegas. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, return value-ish. He did a decent job. I think he did better than most running backs on this slate. So Kelsey, he put up 17.9 fantasy points. Pretty good. I think he was like the second or third tight end on the week, if you count Njoku. But he played Thursday, so he wasn't really technically on this main slate. Michael Pittman, he didn't kill us either. He had 15.2 fantasy points. Not bad. Yeah, if you picked him, you wouldn't have absolutely destroyed your lineup. I mean, but there were some better options, kind of cheaper guys that I did kind of pick, actually. So going over this, Jalen Hurts, kind of talked about him already. Miles Sanders, a dud, unfortunately. A.J. Brown had a decent game, and then Devontae Smith killed it. I did say he would be a good GPP option, so if you did listen to me there and you selected him, then you would have made a lot of money. I think the number one stack, actually, who won the Million Maker, definitely had Devontae Smith. So real cheap, a lot of fantasy output. Kind of hard to predict, but hey, I mean, I put him in here. If I didn't plug him into any of my lineups, maybe I should take my own advice. Maybe I should diversify a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, good pick there. Curtis Samuel, He went right around value again, 13.1, and then Jahan Dotson was kind of bad. I said not to go on these Commanders. I said if you want to, you can. There'd be some good GPP plays, most likely, but yeah, I was kind of saying don't really gravitate towards these Washington guys because I figured the Eagles were going to blow them out, and they did. So, yeah, moving on. Rams Cardinals. This was a pretty decent game. Stafford. Oh, yeah, Stafford did pretty. Oh, no, he did not do well, actually. He scored maybe like 10 fantasy points. He did not throw any passing touchdowns. The Rams won. Cup, he got 20 plus points. Allen Robinson, he had a few receptions. He was kind of underwhelming. Higbee got 10 fantasy points. So Higbee was a good choice yet again. I think he might be one of the go-to guys. Continuing on, I said not to pick. Well, I messed that up. I said not to pick. I can't remember if it's Darryl, Damian Williams. I want to say it's Darryl. So yeah, I said not really to pick him if Connor was out. So yeah, he did pretty terrible. Marquise Brown, another one that I touched on that was another heavy hitter. So if you had him in some of your lineups, you were killing it as well. Same with Dortch. So it's interesting when two wide receivers can kind of return value like that, but the quarterback doesn't really perform because I don't think Kyler Murray did very well. Joe Burrow killed it. He had 25 fantasy points for his value. That's pretty awesome. Joe Mixon, a dud, essentially. The best wide receiver there was Tyler Boyd, so that was pretty interesting. Like I said, all these like kind of lower third tier or second tier type guys who normally aren't the wide receiver ones or running back ones kind of took that role this week, at least scoring wise. So interesting week. Mac Jones killed it, 21.94 fantasy points. Fournette, he didn't absolutely kill you, but he did not perform as well as I thought he would. I don't see why Brady doesn't throw him the ball more. That was very successful last season. Fournette's running out for these dump passes, and it seems like Brady, he's doing his reads, and then he'll like look at Fournette, and then he'll just pass to somebody else. He was targeting Cameron Brate a lot. Brate would run these kind of dump pass plays as well. So yeah, kind of interesting there, but hopefully in the future Fournette picks it up. I mean, I've got him in one of my fantasy leagues too, so it's kind of unfortunate to invest high round draft picks and then not get the value that you want from those types of guys. We already touched on David Montgomery injured. Damian Harris, he did okay, 12.6 fantasy points, did better than most running backs. Almost returned value there. Cordero Patterson killed it, another good option. I'm proud of myself for picking that one. He's always got that upside potential for him. And then moving down to these wide receivers, all of these were pretty bad. I mean, Devontae Adams, another kind of dud. He got some points, but it wasn't as good as I would hope. Mike Williams didn't really do much. I don't know if something's wrong with Herbert still. I probably should have taken that into consideration when picking Mike Williams, but it is what it is. Brandon Cooks, 4.2 points. I don't know what's going on with him. He's getting the targets. The Texans are just trash. I feel sorry for anybody who picked up Cooks. I'm high on Cooks still. I like him a lot just from that volume. So hopefully Mills can get something going and get some good balls out to him at some point. So Drake London, he had a pretty good game, 14.4 fantasy points. All these rookies are still performing pretty well, along with Garrett Wilson. He had 12 fantasy points, but yeah, like I said earlier, he kind of got taken out of the game for a little bit with an injury. Chris Olave, he was one of my big guys. Like, I was super high on Chris Olave this week. I had him in almost every lineup. He torched the Panthers, got over 100 receiving yards, bunch of receptions. He looks like the number one guy. I think Michael Thomas got taken out of the game. They were even using Traquan Smith in there. So, yeah, I think Landry and Thomas got injured. So, Olave moving forward will be pretty great. All right, here we go with the dart throws. Yeah, we talked about Aguilar didn't perform as we thought. Devontae Parker was who we should have been looking at. Duvernay did all right. He got like one touchdown, and that kind of like made him receive value there. So Aquademius St. Brown, he is the wide receiver one at the Bears still. I was watching the game and he was getting targeted a good bit, so it could have been a sneaky play, but he didn't really return that much value. Andy Isabella, just meh. I mean, I said GPP plays maybe for him, but yeah, it is what it is. He was not very good. The Bucks D was pretty great. they had scored over like 10 fantasy points. They just destroyed the pack. Well, that's not true. They did all right. I mean, that was a highly defensive game. They didn't destroy the Packers, but their defense looked great. They shut down Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. The only person who really did anything was Alan Lazard, and Robert Tonyan got a bunch of targets and receptions. So Texans about 9 fantasy points. I didn't even look up the Seahawks fantasy points, to be honest, but I think they got around 10-ish, so that wasn't too bad of a option either. All right, moving on. So that's just a quick recap. I spent probably too much time on that than what I really should have. So let's talk about the game tonight. All right. So this is going to be an interesting game. I think the Cowboys are going to win. I mean, I really just don't believe in the Giants that much. I think that Cooper Rush is pretty freaking good. He might even be better than Dak Prescott. That's probably just like a little exaggeration, but I mean, I think he performed very well that last game. He threw for, let's say, I think it was 31 times, and he had 19 completions. He's got that rushing upside. He only had 1 attempt for 2 yards, but in the preseason he was running the ball a lot. So I think he's a good option here. CeeDee Lamb has had 11 targets in both of his games, so he's going to be my captain in this double up here. So CeeDee Lamb looking good. I think that he's relatively decently priced, and for a captain spot, I think that the wide receivers, I'm going wide receiver heavy here, because in this PPR format with DraftKings, you get 5 receptions for 50 yards and you got 10 points already. So with the running backs, they need to rush 100 yards or do the same. And the only people, I mean, Tony Pollard catches the ball, Saquon Barkley somewhat catches the ball, but I think that they're going to be tossing the ball a little bit more in this game for some reason. I'm not super high on Saquon or Zeke. I just think their price is too high. Tony Pollard, honestly, is viable, but let's go with the rest of my picks. So Cooper Rush, I think he's going to be a decent option. I always want to throw quarterbacks in these cash lineups. Got Noah Brown. He had a great game. I think, like I touched on before, he has that rapport with Cooper Rush. He had 5 receptions for 91 yards and a TD, so they're on the same page. I think he will continue to do that this week. One notable thing is Michael Gallup is actually probably projected to play, so that might throw a little bit of a wrench in my lineup, but I'm too scared to grab Michael Gallup here because I just don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if he's fully recovered. They said he practiced all week, right? It says listed as questionable, but the expectation is $62 million and will make a season debut after practicing all week. It couldn't come at a better time. And it says, Cooper Rush leaned on him. But I think I read somewhere he practiced all week, so. Oh yeah, right here. I already read that. I just read it. So, so if he's practicing all week, that looks good for him. I haven't seen any footage of him, but he could be a sneaky captain play and the tournaments tonight. So he's pretty cheap. If he is full health, he's going to kill it. Him and CeeDee Lamb will be getting probably the brunt of the targets, but like I said, he likes Noah Brown, so he might even just be looking at Noah Brown's direction more, just because him and Cooper Rush have that rapport, like I said. So here, there's some options you could go here. Sterling Shepard might not be the guy to go to. I like I talked about before, I like the target heavy guys. He got 10 targets last game. And there's a couple guys out. Wan'Dale Robinson's out. And then, Wan'Dale Robinson's out. And then you've got Kadarius Toney, and he's doubtful. So those are their 2 top guys, essentially, other than Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, and then Richie James Jr. will be the wide receiver 3 if those guys are out again. So I think Sterling Shepard will be the number 1 targeted guy. I think the Giants are probably going to lose this game, so I think they might be passing a little bit more. So I think Sterling Shepard's a decent pick. I'd rather get somebody from a different team than go to somebody like Zeke or Pollard. But you could easily do that if you really just want to stack Dallas's offense. But I want to get a little bit more exposure to both teams here. So Yeah, I mean, just in case the Giants do score a bit. So yeah, Sterling Shepard is the guy I want. Essentially, excuse me. Uh, Ferguson, super cheap, $200. I mean, I just pulled up the depth chart, uh, Cowboys depth chart. So you're looking at Dalton Schultz, he's questionable, and then the guy right behind him is Jake Ferguson. So maybe Schultz will be out and Ferguson will be in. If Schultz is in, maybe he won't play as much, and Ferguson could see a heightened role. He's only $200. I mean, he's literally just a fade play, so I can fit these other more expensive guys in this lineup. So even if he gets 0 points, not going to affect me that much. I mean, to be honest, we got some pretty high caliber guys. We got both quarterbacks. We got 3 top receivers, so I think we'll be fine in this cash lineup. And if Ferguson does play, gets a few targets, few receptions, we're gravy. So yeah, Daniel Jones, he's got a little bit of a rushing upside as well. He has a decent quarterback rating throughout the year. I mean, look at it, he's got like a 115 and then an 87, so shouldn't be a bad play. I think the Cowboys D is going to be pretty rough for him. I think they're gonna hold them to like less than probably 20 points for sure. And so I think that Daniel Jones is the second most viable person on the Giants to play. And I just wanted to get some exposure to him so I have a high floor player in these cash games. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. I'm going to go over one tournament lineup real quick. These ones are hard because your lineup's going to be so similar to the other people's lineups. Let me go real quick. I already made a lineup for this tournament. Let me just kind of explain my reasoning. All right. Loading. Okay, here we go. Yeah, like I said, okay. So I'm trying to be sneaky. Got Michael Gallup in. Um, he could go off. Could be the wide receiver 1 on the week. And then Saquon Barkley, he could go off as well. I mean, in week 1, he destroyed the Titans. So maybe he can emulate that one more time. He's a little expensive, so people might be off of him. Then we got CeeDee Lamb, most targeted. Like he's the wide receiver 1 on Cowboys. Cooper Rush, and then Noah Brown. We all had them in the cash lineups as well, so same justification there. And Ferguson, same justification there. He's the tight end too. So I think this could potentially I don't know, be great. I think there might be a lot of dump passes in one scenario to Saquon. Because I feel like that the Cowboys secondary is going to be really good, so they might give up those short dump passes. Um, because they're probably going to be playing cover defense, so they're not going to be playing man. So I think Saquon could break out, maybe get a few receptions, a couple touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a pretty unique lineup. I mean, I'm here to win them if I do become successful. Like if I do get a lot of points from these guys, then I will be different, and then hopefully I win the $1,000,000. So this won't be my only lineup, but just a little bit of justification on like how to get different and stacking the Dallas offense. I think it's a good idea just because I really, really think the Cowboys D will hold the Giants to a small amount of points. And yeah, I think they're gonna have a pretty big day. I think the Cowboys are gonna have a pretty big day. So all right, that'll do it for the podcast for today. Yeah, I appreciate everybody watching. Sorry about this last week if you did use my lineup, but we did have a couple good options. So don't take every single lineup I make and plug it and play, and then I don't know, fully maximize that lineup. Take a couple of the guys that I overview and maybe kind of differentiate and diversify your lineup, and just yeah, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I appreciate everybody who watches, likes, comments, subscribes. Thank you so much. I will see you soon. I will go over this lineup probably tomorrow or Wednesday, and then we can go over the Thursday slate. Have a good one. Bye.